Countdown to Halloween 2023, featuring eerie and uncanny tales of haunts, ghosts, and suspense. October is finally here. Join us all month for special Halloween presentations on Storylink Radio's YouTube channel as we count down to Halloween 2023. Keep a close eye on YouTube alerts or you'll miss one. Celebrate October with us right here and now. Tonight's presentation from Storylink Radio. Nine Lives. Wow. Jason was certain there wasn't a computer game around that there'd be no kitties or other animals harmed in the telling of this story, in case anyone was wondering. Jason was certain there was not a computer game around that he couldn't win or another player could beat his scores. Well, there was one person who could hold his own in a competition. Until a couple of weeks ago, Peter had been Jason's very best friend, but now Steve was avoiding him. In school on Monday, Jason decided to find out what was wrong. When he saw Steve turn the corner and approach the front entrance, he trotted up to meet him. "Hey, buddy," Jason said, trying to sound casual. "I was waiting for you." Steve flinched and stepped back. He looked startled as he glanced from side to side, then slowly relaxed. "What for?" His voice was sullen. "Well, I got this new game. It's called the Barbary Coast. It's got pirates and stuff, and you have to find this treasure before the pirates capture you and make you walk the plank." Steve looked up. For a moment, his expression changed as if he was about to ask something, but he didn't. He fixed his stare on the ground and moved on. "Come on, buddy." Jason tried one more time. "You can come over after school. Look, if something's bothering you, I want to help, okay?" He put his hands on his friend's shoulder. Steve shrugged it off. "No, I can't." He halted and peered directly into Jason's eyes. He seemed frightened. "And stay away from me, Jason. I mean it." When Jason's mother knocked on the door of his room the following Saturday and told him that Steve had come to visit, Jason was really surprised. He was even more surprised when he saw that his friend looked as if he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles ringed his eyes. He was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. "Look, Jason," Steve began when the two friends were alone in his room. "I know I've been acting really weird lately, but maybe I shouldn't ask, but I need your help, man. I think you're the only one who can help me." He ran his fingers through his hair, trying to choose his words carefully. "Look, I'm not sure how to say this. I don't know if you'll believe me." "Try me." Jason watched as Steve fumbled in his jacket pocket and pulled out a small computer disk. He placed it carefully on the edge of the desk and stepped back as if the thing might make some sort of move on its own. "You remember the store down on Foothill Boulevard that used to sell old comic books and baseball cards and stuff?" Jason thought it for a moment. "Oh, yeah. It closed down last year, didn't it? There was a fire or something." "Yeah, but a couple weeks ago I rode on my bike and a new store was in its place when I went by, and a display of computer games in the window and a big orange sign that said grand opening." Jason was interested. "Well, I didn't know a new store had opened there. Did they have anything good?" "Well, that's what's so strange." Steve sank down onto the edge of the bed. "All they had was this one game. It was called 9 Lives. The guy in the store was odd, too. When he asked me if he could help me, I told him I was just looking and I didn't have any money. He said it was no problem. I could take a copy of the game home with me and try it." "He let you take it home for nothing?" asked Jason, rather envious. "Yeah. He said I'd come back to give him payment in full. Everyone always came back," he said. I didn't know what he meant. And everyone always came back, but I should have just turned around and walked out. Now it's too late. I've started and I have to keep playing. I tried to take it back, but the store isn't there anymore." "What, you mean it went out of business already?" "No, man. It's more like it was never even there to begin with. The place is all boarded up. There's stains on the outside walls from the fire, just like it used to look." It was easy to see that Steve was serious. Jason picked up the game disc and examined it. It looked like any other. He started to slip it into his computer. "No, wait!" Steve gripped him by the wrist. "Once you start, you can't stop." "Yeah, I know what you mean," Jason said, laughing, and slid the disc into the slot in the computer. Immediately, the title of the game appeared on the screen, surrounded by a standard assortment of mythical beasts. A flame-spouting dragon crouched atop the first N. A two-headed vulture was perched on the I. A razor-clawed ogre leaned against the following letter. There were 9 creatures in all, one for each letter. A skeleton controlled the V, and a A huge beast with the head of a bull, long curved horns straddled the E in lives. The last character was an evil-eyed sorcerer standing beside a large box with a small slender opening at one side and an oval inset of some kind. At the center of the oval was a picture of a bizarre lock. Jason shivered as the image filled the screen. Steve shook his head and sighed heavily. The game doesn't stop when the computer is off. Those things, he said, gesturing toward the images of the beasts, can show up anywhere, any time. If you don't meet their challenge, you must give up a life, one that's close to you. Once you start to play, you have to continue. The last life at risk is your own, but it isn't just your life that's at stake. It's your soul. Steve reached out and touched the figure of the sorcerer on the computer. That's what he really wants. By playing the game, you enable him to take your soul captive. To save it, you have to find the sorcerer's hiding place and release it. If he destroys you first, then your soul is his forever. Sounds cool, Jason replied as he clicked the game. Several options appeared on the screen. You don't understand, Steve wailed. Jason stopped. It's for real, man. I didn't believe it either, but in the past 2 weeks, too many things have happened. You remember Jojo? Jason nodded. Jojo the canary had been a birthday present. The day I lost the first challenge, I found Jojo dead at the bottom of the cage. And the next loss, my dog, Jericho, got out of the house. And you haven't seen him. I think he was hit by a car or something. I knew then that I shouldn't play anymore. But the creatures in the game don't let you stop. They can show up anywhere. And it gets worse. My next-door neighbor? Well, that was all my fault. Mr. Davis fell from the ladder while he was working on his roof, Jason answered softly. How could that be your fault? It wasn't no accident. Steve lowered his head into his hands. And 10 days ago, my cousin was killed when the brakes on his car failed. And my grandfather, his voice faltered, he died last week of a heart attack. The score is 5-0. I don't know who'll be next. Maybe my sister or my parents. The boy looked up at his friend. You said you wanted to help me. I can't defeat it. I'm not good enough. But together, maybe we are. We might have a chance. But if you agree, you'll be in danger. Your soul could be held captive, too. It all sounded crazy, but Jason realized that Steve believed it was true. He had to do something to help him. He glanced at the screen. There was an option that read, Do you wish to add a player to your team? He lightly touched the keyboard. A warning appeared. Are you sure? Consequences of loss will transfer to new player. Jason looked at Steve, then tapped the key again. A single word appeared. Accepted. A cold chill ran through Jason's body. He felt terribly empty and alone. He barely heard Steve thanking him over and over for joining him. When Steve left, the strange feeling passed. Jason sat down at the computer and clicked the box that said, New player. Of course, he didn't accept all of this, but he was curious about the game because it made his friends so upset. Since he was entering the contest at the point where Steve had left off, the score was already 5-0. In this round, he chose a sword as his weapon and battled a winged serpent through a challenging maze. It was close for a first try, but he lost. In the lower corner of the screen, the score flipped to 6-0. Disappointed, he turned off the computer and flopped down on his bed. He tapped the glass of the small, dry aquarium on the nightstand next to the bed, but his pet iguana didn't move. Slowly he stood, reached into the aquarium, and nudged the animal slightly. It was dead. That night, Jason was awakened by an eerie glow in his room. As he sat up, he noted the computer was on. The screen read round 7. From somewhere in the room, he heard a distant scraping noise that seemed to be drawing nearer. He tipped his head. It seemed to be right nearer and nearer, under, nearer and nearer. His bed! A bony hand shot out from under the mattress and clamped his ankle with a painful grip. As hard as he struggled, he couldn't break free of that burnt-looking bony hand. It pulled him to the floor, and it dragged him relentlessly under the bed. Jason clawed at the rug, crumpling it in his hands, but did no good. He was being drawn under the bed into the pitch-dark pit. Suddenly, a hand reached out to grasp his. He saw Steve's face. He heard his friend's voice as if from a great distance. Hang on, please, hang on. He clasped Steve's not burnt-up, crispy hand with all of his might, but Jason felt his grip weakening inch by inch until it slipped away. Helpless, he felt himself falling and falling. With a yelp, Jason opened his eyes and sat straight up in bed. Sweat poured down his face as he looked around the room in panic. Then he began to relax. Oh, it was only a dream, he decided. But when his gaze fell on the computer, in the lower left-hand corner was the score 7-0. At the edge of his bed, he noticed the rug was crumpled into a knot. Slowly, he pushed back the sheets. Dark bruises were forming around his ankle, and something that looked like black ashes were wrapped all around it. It wasn't a dream. It's just like Steve said, he thought in horror. They can be anywhere. As he tried to make sense of what had happened, Jason became aware of the sound of the telephone ringing. After a few moments, he heard crying from downstairs. He slipped out of bed and crept toward the kitchen. Although the clock read 3:20 a.m., the lights were on and he could hear his father's voice. Dad? Jason blinked in the glare of the brightly lit room. His mother was sitting at the kitchen table, sobbing. Beside her, his father sat stroking her shoulder and speaking in low tones. Dad, what's wrong? Jason, his father motioned for him to come into his room and sat up and dried her reddened eyes. It's Uncle Phil. Phil was his mother's younger brother. He had left for vacation only the night before. There's been an accident. Jason waited until his parents had gone to bed and then slipped out just after dawn and raced to Steve's house 3 blocks away. Steve! Steve! He whispered hoarsely, trying to catch his breath. He tossed pebbles at the window glass of his friend's second-story bedroom. The window slid open. Steve leaned out, too. He was fully dressed and wide awake. Jason, I'll be right down. A moment later, the boys were standing side by side in the early morning light. My uncle, Jason gasped. I thought it was a dream, but I know what happened. I saw it on my computer. I tried to help, but I wasn't strong enough to hold you. I'm feeling weaker all the time. What are we going to do? We don't know when or where the next round will take place. I'm sorry I got you into this. For just a regular game, it'd be easy, but this is different. Jason tilted his head slightly. What did you say? This is different from... No, wait. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't different, Jason interrupted. The key to winning any game is paying attention and staying one step ahead. We know where the next round takes place if we choose it. I say we go ahead and find the sorcerer now. We have no idea who or where he is. Sure we do. You already talked to him. Steve's eyes lit up. The man in the store where I got the game. Right. He said you'd be back, and you will. But before he's expecting you, I have another idea, too. If my hunch is correct, we'll need the game disc and probably a flashlight. There's one other thing I have to do. We can stop at my house on the way. It was still early when they reached the store on Foothill Boulevard. As Steve had said, he looked as if he had never been opened since the fire. The windows were still boarded up. The boys picked their way back to the entrance. There they pried open a board and managed to crawl inside. Both felt their strength draining in each passing moment. Jason pulled out his flashlight. He played the slender beam around the room. It doesn't look like anybody been in here for a long time. I was, Steve whispered, shivering slightly. When you first saw the man, where had he come from? Steve looked around. I don't know, man. Things are different now. But I think he came in from over there. He pointed to a door just beyond a low archway. The boys moved quickly toward the door. Suddenly, Steve toppled forward, his hands flailing in the air. Jason barely managed to grab his friend's wrist, preventing him from being swallowed up in what appeared to be a dark pit. Hang on, Jason grunted as he yanked Steve back, sending both of them to the ground. Once he had caught his breath, Jason shone the light across the floor. Directly in their path was a gaping hole. Both boys crawled to the cavity and peered over the edge. In the flashlight beam, they could see the pit was about 20 feet deep, and the bottom of it was covered with slithering, writhing snakes. Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Whew! Steve gasped. That was close. We must be on the right track. We got to be careful, though. There might be other traps. With renewed caution, the boys made their way around the pit to the door and tried the knob. It's locked, Jason huffed. He ran his fingers along the edge. Wait, there's a slot here. Maybe it's like one of those card key locks. Smiling, he took the game disc from his pocket and slipped it into the slot. The door clicked and opened slowly. Jason removed the disc, and the two boys eased into the room. At the far wall stood what looked like some sort of strange computer with a blank oval-shaped screen. It was just the contraption the sorcerer stood next to in the title drawing. This is it, Jason murmured. This is where he plays the game. They advanced toward the bizarre machine, and then with a whine, the oval screen sputtered to life. As in the drawing, the image of a lock was at its center. Now what? Steve was trembling. Jason stood before the machine. He slipped in the disc and fingered the keyboard. I'm sure that releasing this lock will free us. I just have to figure out how to delete. The command materialized on the screen, along with the notification that somebody's microphone was on, and then the lock disappeared. Jason laughed aloud. That's it. But his smile faded as the lock quickly reappeared. Wait, what's wrong? What did I miss? From the shadows near the open door behind them, a deep voice growled. You didn't really think it was going to be that simple, did you? Whirling, the boys came face to face with the sorcerer himself. He towered above them, his eyes glittering in horrible triumph. Did you forget the rules? They are quite clear. To release your souls, you must find where they are hidden and then save them. The boys backed away. It's rather a pity, really, he whispered ominously as he came towards them. You both came so close. Much closer than most. With long, gnarly fingers, the sorcerer reached out and slipped Jason's game disc from the slot in the computer. He held it up for them to see. Yes, a pity. They were imprinted right in here under your nose. Ha ha! The wave of his hand, the disc disappeared. But it's far too late now. While he spoke, a luminous mist began to gather in the center of the room. A dark shape took form in the whirling mist. With a blood-chilling snarl, a monstrous beast emerged. It had the body of a man and the head of a bull. Saliva oozed from its gaping mouth, and blood dripped from the tips of its long, sharp horns. Its gaze settled on the two boys as it paced hungrily toward them. The sorcerer snickered and clutched the disc. Yes, far too late. Maybe not. Calling upon his failing strength, Jason pushed Steve to one side and screamed, Jump! The boys leaped forward and then rolled under the cumbersome beast's outstretched arms. Back on his feet, Jason raced to the computer. The sorcerer turned toward him and leveled his pointed finger at the boy. Get away from there! Ignoring him, Jason ripped another disc from his pocket and jammed it into the slot. As he quickly worked the keyboard, a bolt of blue light flashed from the sorcerer's finger. With the last of his strength, Steve hurled himself across the room, smashed into the sorcerer, and sent him reeling to the ground. The off-target bolt crackled outward, pulverizing the howling half-man, half-monster in a blast of flame and smoke. Once again, Jason hit the delete command, and the lock vanished once more. Next, the touch of a final key, the save command flashed onto the screen. This time a gust of air rushed upward. The boys each felt something warm and strong seeping into them as they watched the sorcerer begin to fade. How? The conquering being moaned weakly. Jason held up a game disc. The first thing I ever learned about computers is to always make a backup. Leaning over, he reached out his hand and helped Steve to his feet. By the time the boys left the room, only a pale lavender haze remained of their challenger. Outside the door, the pit, too, was disappearing. But as they squeezed under an old board and stepped into the sunshine, the haze in the darkened room began to swirl. A small spark flared within it, and at that moment the computer screen lit up in each boy's room at home, and a single message flashed at the center of each screen. Game over. Play again? You've just heard tonight's story from Storylink Radio's Countdown to Halloween 2023. Remember to come back for our next tale. Many more stories of all genres available to listen to and read along with now on our website at www.storylinkradio.com. Visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/storylinkradio. And visit our podcast for easy mobile listening anywhere, anytime. Just search for Storylink Radio on your favorite podcast provider. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that alert bell for Storylink Radio.